Winston Frederick Sterzel. I need your help, Winston Frederick Sterzel. You heard me right, I need your help. You probably heard the saying before, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Right, Winston Frederick Sterzel? That happens to be the only reason that Falun Gong is allowed to be in the United States, Winston Frederick Sterzel. I'll come back to Falun Gong a little bit later, Winston Frederick Sterzel. What I want to talk about today, Winston Frederick Sterzel, is a YouTube channel. There are, in fact, several of these channels, Winston Frederick Sterzel, but I specifically want to talk about China Observer. China Observer. Who is China Observer, Winston Frederick Sterzel? China Observer, by another name, is Kanzhonghua, also known as Vision Times, Winston Frederick Sterzel, meaning China Observer is Falun Gong affiliated. Who is Falun Gong, Winston Frederick Sterzel? Falun Gong, Winston Frederick Sterzel, is a cult whose leader claims to be able to fly and walk through walls. Li Hongzhi, Falun Gong's leader, also claims to be able to read the minds of his followers, Winston Frederick Sterzel. Many of them at the same time. Among many other really weird claims, Winston Frederick Sterzel, like he can see the future. He believes all interracial children, Winston Frederick Sterzel, will spend eternity in purgatory. That's personal for you, Winston Frederick Sterzel. Li Hongzhi also doesn't believe in evolution or computers. The list goes on and on and on, Winston Frederick Sterzel, of weird claims. So how does this all relate to us having something in common, Winston Frederick Sterzel? I remember that your sidekick once did a video about screen time, Winston Frederick Sterzel. I'd have to say, I guess it's kind of true, Winston Frederick Sterzel, he was right on that one. Each person has a limited time to spend in front of a screen, Winston Frederick Sterzel. Channels like China Observer take up a lot of that screen time, Winston Frederick Sterzel. China Observer is eating your views, Winston Frederick Sterzel. China Observer has over 670,000 subscribers, Winston Frederick Sterzel. Many of those, Winston Frederick Sterzel, likely subscribe to your channels as well. If you've never seen their content, Winston Frederick Sterzel, I can tell you, they just slap together random videos and they create a narrative using an AI voice to narrate, Winston Frederick Sterzel. Never showing the face of anyone at China Observer, Winston Frederick Sterzel, or taking any responsibility for their content. If you look into the comment section of China Observer, Winston Frederick Sterzel, you'll find the worst angry comments directed at China and the Chinese people that you've ever seen, Winston Frederick Sterzel. These are some hardcore haters, Winston Frederick Sterzel. Funny thing is, their subscribers likely don't realize the content they're watching was produced by Chinese people, the worst of the Chinese people, as a matter of fact, Winston Frederick Sterzel. To make matters worse, Winston Frederick Sterzel, they're just churning out a new video about every 4 hours, and generally they get between 100,000 and 500,000 views. I believe there are several channels that operate the same way, Winston Frederick Sterzel, run by the same people, Winston Frederick Sterzel, entirely driven to take advantage and monetize the blind need for anti-China content, Winston Frederick Sterzel. I realize David Zhang, Lay's Real Talk, China Uncensored, and others are funded by the same people, Winston Frederick Sterzel. Even you, Winston Frederick Sterzel, are likely at least partially funded by the same people. But at least your channels put a face to the deception, Winston Frederick Sterzel, right? I consider those channels like China Observer to be counterfeit channels, Winston Frederick Sterzel. Fake. When you and others talk about losing views, Winston Frederick Sterzel, these fake channels are likely more responsible than even Little Red Book or I Show Speed, Winston Frederick Sterzel, at taking your views. As Falun Gong perfects the use of these fake channels, Winston Frederick Sterzel, you and others will be starved out and become obsolete, Winston Frederick Sterzel. I welcome you, Winston Frederick Sterzel, to join me speaking out against channels like China Observer. You have a huge platform, Winston Frederick Sterzel, which will be seen by many and perhaps all of their subscribers. As a faceless channel using an AI voice, Winston Frederick Sterzel, it's unlikely they have a loyal following. How could they? So yes, Winston Frederick Sterzel, I'd say it's likely that 99% of their subscribers are also your subscribers, Winston Frederick Sterzel. Just remember, Winston Frederick Sterzel, they all have limits. Everybody has a limit to the number of screen hours they can watch. If you do speak out about China Observer, Winston Frederick Sterzel, I'll even include it in a future video as something positive coming from you, Winston Frederick Sterzel. You may hate me, Winston Frederick Sterzel, but I could never do near the damage to your income that China Observer and others like them are doing, Winston Frederick Sterzel.